The courtroom was dead silent. Every eye in that Lagos High Court was on me. Amara Okafor, the woman they'd called vindictive, bitter, a liar. My husband's family sat 3 rows behind him, their faces twisted with contempt. His mother hadn't stopped glaring at me since I walked in. His brother had called me last night, his voice dripping with disgust. "You're destroying this family over lies," he'd said. "Chidi is a good man. You're just angry he moved on." Moved on. That's what they called it. I clutched the folder in my lap, my fingers trembling despite how hard I tried to stay calm. The judge, Justice Adebayo, a stern woman in her 50s with silver-rimmed glasses, flipped through the documents I'd submitted. She hadn't looked up in 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Chidi sat beside his lawyer, perfectly composed in his tailored navy suit. He looked like the successful investment banker everyone believed him to be. Respectable, trustworthy, a pillar of the community. He caught my eye and smiled, not warmly, but with that same cold confidence I'd seen the night I discovered everything. The smile that said, "You have nothing." Then Justice Adebayo looked up. She removed her glasses slowly, deliberately. "Mr. Okafor," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Before we proceed with your counterpetition, I have one question." Chidi straightened, nodding respectfully. "Yes, Your Honor. If you claim your wife is making false accusations against you, if she is, as your family has stated in their character witness statements, mentally unstable and vindictive, then can you explain to this court why you transferred 4 million naira from your joint business account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands 3 days after she filed for divorce?" The courtroom erupted. Chidi's face drained of color. His lawyer shot to his feet, stammering something about improper discovery. Chidi's mother let out a cry of confusion. His brother's mouth fell open. But I didn't move. I just stared at him, watching the mask finally crack. Because that question, that single question, was about to unravel everything. 6 months earlier, I didn't know any of this was coming. I was living what I thought was a blessed life. Chidi and I had been married for 8 years. We'd met at the University of Lagos during our final year, him studying finance, me studying architecture. He was charming, ambitious, and he pursued me with a determination that felt like devotion. My parents loved him. My friends envied me. When he proposed 2 years after graduation, overlooking the Lagos Lagoon at sunset, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. We built a life together. I started my own architectural consulting firm, specializing in sustainable housing projects. Chidi climbed the corporate ladder at Zenith Capital, one of the top investment firms in West Africa. We bought a beautiful home in Lekki Phase 1. We hosted dinner parties. We went to church every Sunday. On paper, we were the perfect couple. I should have known better. My mother used to say, when something looks too perfect, look closer. But I didn't want to look closer. I wanted to believe. The cracks started small. So small I convinced myself I was imagining them. Chidi began working late more frequently, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. He'd come home after 11, smelling of cologne I didn't recognize, claiming the deals were getting bigger, more complex. "We're handling international clients now, Amara," he'd explain, kissing my forehead. "This is what success looks like." I believed him because I wanted to. Because the alternative, that my husband was lying to me, felt impossible. Then came the phone calls. He'd step out of the room when his phone rang, even when we were in the middle of dinner. "Client," he'd mouth, gesturing apologetically. Once, I asked why he couldn't take work calls in front of me. He laughed it off. "Confidentiality, baby. Bank regulations. You know how it is." But I didn't know. And the not knowing began to eat at me. The real shift happened on a Wednesday in March. We were supposed to attend my business partner's anniversary party together. Chidi canceled at the last minute, emergency meeting with a Dubai investor. I went alone, put on a brave face, made excuses for his absence. When I got home around 10, his car wasn't in the driveway. I called him. No answer. I texted. Nothing. He came home at 2 in the morning. "The meeting ran long," he said, heading straight for the shower. "I'm exhausted." But his shirt collar had lipstick on it. Dark red. Not my shade. I didn't confront him that night. Fear paralyzed me, fear of what I'd find if I started pulling at that thread. So I did what many women do. I made excuses. Maybe it was from a greeting. Maybe a colleague hugged him. Maybe. The maybes became my prison. What would you have done? When you see the signs but you're terrified of the truth, do you dig deeper or do you pretend everything's fine? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because what I discovered next changed everything, and you won't want to miss what happens when the truth finally comes to light. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Not in an obsessive way, at least that's what I told myself, but with the kind of quiet vigilance that comes when you realize the person sleeping next to you might be a stranger. April brought more irregularities. Chidi started going to the gym at odd hours. 5 in the morning, sometimes. Or right after work, before coming home. He'd always been fit, but suddenly he was meticulous about his appearance in ways he'd never been before. New colognes appeared in our bathroom. Designer brands I'd never bought him. When I asked about them, he said they were gifts from grateful clients. Since when do clients give you cologne? I asked, trying to sound casual. He laughed, that easy, dismissive laugh that used to charm me. Amara, these UE investors are different. They give gifts for everything. It's cultural. I wanted to believe him. God, how badly I wanted to believe him. But then our joint account started showing unusual activity. We'd always kept our finances partially separate. My business earnings in one account, his salary in another, and a joint account for household expenses and savings. I handled most of the household bills, so I checked that account regularly. In late April, I noticed a transfer I didn't recognize. 20,000 naira, moved to an account I'd never seen before. When I asked Chidi about it at dinner that night, he barely looked up from his jollof rice. Investment opportunity, he said. A colleague's tech startup. I told you about it. He hadn't told me about it. I would have remembered. But arguing felt exhausting, and part of me wondered if I was becoming paranoid. Maybe he had mentioned it and I'd forgotten. Maybe I was so focused on my own projects, I was in the middle of bidding for a major government housing contract, that I'd stopped paying attention to his life. The guilt of that possibility kept me quiet. May arrived with its heavy rains and heavier silences. Chidi and I barely spoke anymore unless it was about logistics. Did you pay the electricity bill? What time is your mother coming over? I'll be late tonight. Our conversations had become transactional, stripped of warmth. My best friend, Ngozi, noticed during one of our Thursday lunch dates at a cafe in Victoria Island. We'd been friends since secondary school, and she knew me better than anyone. You look tired, Amara, she said, studying my face over her Chapman drink. And I don't mean physically tired. You look sad. I hadn't cried yet. Not once. But sitting across from Ngozi, under her concerned gaze, I felt the dam beginning to crack. I think something's wrong with Chidi, I admitted quietly. I don't know what I think. Has he hurt you? Her voice turned sharp, protective. No, nothing like that. He's just different. Distant. And there are these small things that don't add up. Ngozi leaned forward. What kind of things? I told her everything. The late nights, the lipstick, the mysterious transfers, the new cologne. As I spoke, I heard how it sounded, like the beginning of every cheating husband's story ever told. Ngozi's expression confirmed it. Amara, you need to find out the truth, she said firmly. Not knowing is worse than knowing. Trust me. Ngozi would know. Her own marriage had ended 3 years earlier when she discovered her husband had a whole second family in Abuja. She'd been devastated, but she'd also been decisive. She'd hired a private investigator, gathered evidence, and walked away with her dignity and a fair settlement. How did you do it? I asked. How did you get the courage to look? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Because staying in the dark was killing me slowly. And I deserved better than slow death. That conversation planted a seed. For the next 2 weeks, I wrestled with what to do. Hire an investigator? Confront Chidi directly? Install tracking software on his phone? Every option felt like a betrayal of trust, even though I was increasingly certain he'd already betrayed mine. The decision was made for me on a Saturday in late May. Chidi said he had to go into the office for a few hours, some urgent report for Monday's board meeting. He left around 10 in the morning. I decided to use the time to clean out our bedroom closet, something I'd been putting off for months. I was sorting through Chidi's suits when I found it. A phone. Not his iPhone that he carried everywhere, but a small Android device tucked into the inside pocket of a blazer he rarely wore. It was turned off, but when I pressed the power button, it came to life. No password. No security at all. My hands shook as I opened the messaging app. There were only 3 contacts saved. No names, just initials. Arcade. SM. I clicked on TA first. The message thread loaded, and my stomach dropped. Messages going back months. Missing you already. Can't wait for Tuesday night. The hotel was perfect, baby. Same place next week. The messages were explicit. Intimate. And they were from Chidi. I sat down on the bedroom floor, the phone still in my trembling hands, and scrolled through months of conversations. Tay wasn't the only one. RK sent him photos. Photos I couldn't bear to look at for more than a second. SM discussed money, asked when her allowance would be transferred. 3 women. Maybe more. For at least 18 months. While I'd been working 70-hour weeks to grow my business, believing we were building a future together, my husband had been building a completely separate life. Multiple separate lives. I don't remember how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? Time felt meaningless. Eventually, I heard the sound I'd been dreading, the garage door opening. Chidi was home. I shoved the phone back into the blazer pocket, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. When Chidi walked into the bedroom, I was standing by the window, staring out at nothing. "Hey," he said, loosening his tie. "Report took longer than I thought. I'm starving. Should we order in?" I turned to look at him. Really look at him. This man I'd loved for a decade, married for 8 years, built a home with, dreamed of children with. And I realized I was looking at a complete stranger. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Let's order in." That night, we ate Thai food on the couch and watched a Nollywood movie. Chidi laughed at the funny parts. Put his arm around me during the romantic scenes. Kissed me goodnight before we went to sleep. And I lay next to him in the dark, wide awake, planning my next move. Have you ever had to pretend everything was normal while your world was falling apart? How do you keep breathing when the person you trusted most is the one suffocating you? Let me know in the comments what you would do next. And remember to hit that like button if you're following along, because the confrontation that's coming will show you exactly how far betrayal can go. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. For 3 days, I moved through my life like an actress playing a role. The devoted wife, the successful architect, the woman who had everything together. I made breakfast. Attended client meetings. Smiled at Chidi when he kissed me goodbye each morning. But inside I was screaming. The problem with discovering betrayal is that you can't unknow it. Every moment became a calculation. If I confronted him immediately, what would I have? Screenshots from a phone that wasn't technically mine, that I'd found by snooping? He could deny everything, delete the evidence, gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. His family already thought I was too independent, too Western in my thinking. They'd believe him over me in a heartbeat. If I was going to do this, I needed to be smart. I needed to be thorough. I needed evidence he couldn't deny and allies he couldn't discredit. On the 4th day, I called Ngozi. We met at her apartment in Ikoyi, away from anywhere Chidi or his colleagues might see us. When I told her what I'd found, her face went through every emotion I'd felt: shock, rage, disgust, and finally, a cold determination. "You need a lawyer," she said immediately. "Before you do anything else. Before he knows you know." "I'm not ready for divorce," I said, even though the word had been circling my mind like a vulture for days. "I need to understand the full picture first. The women, yes, but there's something else, Ngozi. Those money transfers. The offshore accounts he mentioned once when he thought I wasn't paying attention. What if this is bigger than affairs?" Ngozi studied me carefully. "What are you thinking?" I'm thinking that a man who can lie to his wife for 18 months about multiple relationships can lie about other things too. Our joint business account, we were supposed to be saving for a house expansion, maybe starting a family soon. What if he's been moving our money? Then you need a forensic accountant, Ngozi said. And you need to protect yourself financially. Now, she gave me 2 names. The first was Barrister Okonkwo, a family lawyer with a reputation for being ruthless but fair. The second was Femi Adeyemi, a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets in divorce cases. I met with both of them that same week, during hours when Chidi thought I was at work sites. Barrister Okonkwo was a tall, imposing woman in her late 50s who listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and steepled her fingers. "Mrs. Okafor, I'm going to be direct with you. Infidelity is painful, but in Nigeria's legal system, it's often difficult to prove and doesn't always result in favorable settlements. What concerns me more is the financial irregularities you've mentioned. If your husband has been moving marital assets without your knowledge or consent, that's something we can work with. That's something that has legal teeth." "So the affairs don't matter?" I asked, feeling a surge of anger. "They matter to you and they should. But strategically, we need to focus on what we can prove and what will protect you materially. The emotional betrayal is real. The financial betrayal is actionable." Femi Adeyemi, the forensic accountant, was younger, maybe early 40s, with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every trick in the book. He reviewed the bank statements I'd brought, 3 years' worth of our joint account activity. "This is interesting," he murmured, highlighting several transactions. "See these transfers? They're consistent. Same amount, same date each month, different recipient accounts. And these larger sums here," he pointed to amounts ranging from 50,000 to 200,000 naira, "they're always just below the reporting threshold that would trigger bank scrutiny." "What does that mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "It means your husband knows exactly what he's doing. This isn't accidental or careless. This is systematic asset diversion. But to know where it's going and why, I'll need access to more than just the joint account. I'll need his personal banking records, credit card statements, investment portfolios. How do I get those without him knowing?" Femi smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. "That's where things get creative. Do you have access to his laptop? His email? Any cloud storage where he might keep financial documents?" I thought about Chidi's study, his locked file cabinet, his password-protected laptop. Maybe. I'd need time. "Then take time," Femi said. "But be careful. Men like this, men who construct elaborate deceptions, they're often paranoid about being discovered. One wrong move and he'll know you're investigating." That night, I started my own investigation. Chidi was at another late meeting. I went into his study, my heart hammering. The laptop was there, closed. I opened it. Password protected as expected. But I knew Chidi. He was brilliant with numbers but lazy with security. I tried his birthday. Wrong. Our anniversary. Wrong. Then I tried something else. His mother's birthday combined with the last 4 digits of his first car's license plate, a combination he'd once mentioned using for his gym locker. The laptop unlocked. I plugged in the external hard drive Femi had given me and began copying files. Financial statements. Tax returns. Email folders labeled investments and accounts and personal. Everything I could find. The copying took 40 minutes. The longest 40 minutes of my life. Every sound made me jump. A car passing outside, the air conditioner clicking on, my own breathing. When the drive was finally full, I ejected it, cleared the laptop's recent activity log the way Femi had taught me, and closed everything exactly as I'd found it. 2 days later, I sat in Femi's office while he reviewed what I'd brought him. His expression grew darker with each document he opened. "Amara," he said finally, looking up at me with something like pity, "your husband hasn't just been having affairs. He's been systematically draining your marital assets for years. These offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, there's over 4 million naira transferred to them. This property in Dubai registered under a shell company, another 8 million. These investment opportunities he mentioned, They don't exist. The money went to personal accounts, cash withdrawals, and payments to individuals I'm guessing are the women you discovered. The room tilted. 4 million. 8 million. More than 12 million naira. Money we'd saved together. Money from my business profits that went into our joint account. Money I'd thought was building our future. There's more, Femi continued, and I didn't think I could take more, but he kept going. He's been taking out loans using your joint property as collateral. If these loans default, and based on the payment history, some are close, you could lose your house. That's not possible, I whispered. I would have had to sign. Not if he forged your signature. Which, based on these documents, appears to be exactly what he did. Forgery. Embezzlement of marital assets. The affairs suddenly seemed almost insignificant compared to the financial devastation Chidi had orchestrated. What do I do? I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. You file for divorce immediately, Barrister Okonkwo said. She joined us for this meeting, anticipating what we'd find. We file for an emergency asset freeze to prevent him from moving more money. We report the forgery. And we make sure every naira he's hidden gets accounted for in court. That was when I decided. Not in anger, anger would come later, but in cold, clear certainty. Chidi had declared war on our marriage, on our partnership, on me. He just didn't know I'd found out yet, and I was going to make sure that when he did find out, it would be too late for him to cover his tracks. What would you do if you discovered the person you loved had been systematically destroying your life? Would you confront them immediately or gather evidence first? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're invested in seeing how this ends, hit that subscribe button now, because the next chapter is where everything explodes, and you won't believe how Chidi reacts when his perfect plan starts falling apart. The divorce papers were filed on a Monday morning in June. Barrister Okonkwo made sure they were delivered to Chidi at his office. Public, professional, impossible to hide. She also filed an emergency motion for an asset freeze and a restraining order preventing him from accessing our joint accounts or selling any marital property. I wasn't there when he received them. I was at my parents' house in Surulere, where I'd moved 3 days earlier under the pretense of helping my mother recover from a minor surgery. It was a lie, but a necessary one. I couldn't be in that house with Chidi, sleeping next to him, pretending, for one more night. My phone started ringing at 11:30 that morning. Chidi. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. 15 times in the first hour. Then the messages started pouring in. Amara, what is this? Call me immediately. This is insane. We need to talk. Whatever you think happened, you're wrong. Just call me. Your lawyer has frozen our accounts. My accounts. You can't do this. Call me. I blocked his number. Within minutes, he started calling from the office line. Then from numbers I didn't recognize, probably colleagues' phones. I blocked those too. Then my mother's phone rang. She handed it to me, confused. It's Chidi. He sounds upset. I took the phone and walked out to the balcony. My hands were steady. I'd practiced this moment in my mind 100 times. Thank God, Chidi's voice was frantic, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. Baby, what's going on? These papers, this is crazy. We can work through whatever's bothering you. Just come home and we'll talk. I found the phone, Chidi. My voice was calm. Dead calm. The Android phone in your blazer. I read everything. All of it. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, Amara, I can explain. I also found the financial records. The offshore accounts. The forged signatures on loan documents. The 12 million naira you've stolen from our marriage. So no, we won't be working through anything. We'll be seeing each other in court. You went through my private files? His voice shifted, shock giving way to anger. You violated my privacy, Amara. That's illegal. I laughed. Actually laughed. You forged my signature on loan documents that could cost us our house, and you're worried about privacy? You're worried about what's illegal? Those investments were for us, he said, and the speed of the lie was almost impressive. I was building our future. The offshore accounts are standard wealth protection. Any financial advisor would tell you. Stop. I cut him off. Just stop. I have a forensic accountant who's already traced every transfer. I have copies of messages where you promised one of your girlfriends you'd take care of her with money from our account. I have everything, Chidi. So save your explanations for the judge. Another silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. The mask was completely off now. You're making a mistake. My family will never forgive you for this. Your reputation. Do you know what people will say about a woman who divorces her husband over nothing? Over nothing? My calm cracked slightly. Multiple affairs and financial fraud is nothing? You have no proof of affairs. Messages can be faked. And those financial decisions were mine to make as the primary earner in this household. Good luck proving otherwise. The primary earner. There was. The truth he'd always believed but never said out loud. That his money mattered more. That his choices superseded mine. That I was just an accessory to his life, not an equal partner. We'll see, I said. Your lawyer will receive the full evidence package tomorrow. I'm sure he'll explain your legal position very clearly. I hung up before he could respond. My mother was standing in the doorway, her face pale. Amara, what's happening? What did Chidi do? I told her everything. When I finished, she sat down heavily on the balcony chair, one hand pressed to her chest. Chi-mo, she whispered. My God. That boy. I welcomed him into this family. I trusted him with my daughter. Mama, I need you to prepare yourself, I said gently. His family will come. They'll call you and Daddy liars. They'll say I'm making this up. They'll try to pressure you into talking me out of the divorce. She looked at me with fierce eyes. Let them come. Let them say whatever they want. I raised you to be strong, not stupid. You have evidence. You have truth. That's all that matters. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. In our culture, divorce was still a scandal. A woman who left her husband, even a cheating, stealing husband, was often blamed more than the man who drove her away. I was about to become the subject of whispers at church, at family gatherings, in the market. The woman who couldn't keep her husband. The woman who was too proud, too westernized, too unwilling to compromise. I was right. Chidi's family descended like a storm. His mother, Mrs. Patricia Okafor, showed up at my parents' house 2 days later with Chidi's 2 younger sisters and his aunt. They didn't knock gently. They pounded on the gate until our security guard opened it, then marched into the living room like they owned it. Where is she? Mrs. Okafor demanded. Where is this girl who thinks she can destroy my son's life? I walked out to meet them. My father tried to stand with me, but I gestured for him to stay seated. This was my battle. Good afternoon, Ma. I greeted her formally, traditionally, even though I wanted to scream. Don't me, she spat. What kind of wife are you? Chidi gave you everything. A home, a name, respectability. And this is how you repay him? With lies and legal threats. They're not lies, I said quietly. I have evidence of everything I've accused him of. Evidence. Chidi's sister, Adiz, laughed bitterly. You mean the private documents you stole from his office? The phone you had no right to touch? That's called theft, Amar. You're the criminal here, not Chidi. He forged my signature, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. He stole from our joint accounts. He's been having affairs with multiple women. How is any of that acceptable to you? Mrs. Okafor stepped closer to me, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Men make mistakes. That's what they do. A good wife forgives. A good wife prays. A good wife doesn't run to court and embarrass her husband publicly. You think you're so educated, so modern, but you don't understand marriage at all. Then I don't want to understand it, I shot back. Not if understanding means accepting betrayal and theft as mistakes. Vindictive, Chidi's aunt said, shaking her head. That's what you are. A vindictive woman who can't accept that her husband is more successful than her. You're jealous of Chidi's achievements, and now you're trying to bring him down. The words stung more than I expected. Vindictive. It would become their favorite weapon. Over the next weeks, I'd hear it everywhere. At church, where I stopped attending because the whispers were too loud. In my business circles, where some clients suddenly became too busy to take my calls. On social media, where Chidi's friends posted vague messages about gold diggers and bitter women. Chidi played his role perfectly. He became the wounded husband, the betrayed man whose wife had turned on him without cause. He gave interviews to mutual friends, always with the same story. He'd made some investment decisions without consulting me, yes, but they were for our benefit. The messages on the phone? Taken out of context, possibly faked. He loved his wife, wanted to save his marriage, but I was being unreasonable, irrational, vindictive. Some people believed him, more than I'd expected, because it's easier to believe that a woman is crazy than to accept that a charming, successful man is a fraud. But I had something Chidi didn't count on. I had Barrister Okonkwo, who didn't care about public opinion. I had Femi, whose forensic analysis was airtight. And I had my own backbone, which had been forged in the fire of discovering that the man I loved never existed. The preliminary hearing was set for August. For 8 weeks, we prepared. Every bank statement analyzed. Every transfer traced. Every forged signature verified by handwriting experts. Barrister Okonkwo built a case so thorough that Chidi's lawyer, a man named Barrister Ease who'd initially seemed confident, started making settlement offers. Your client should accept responsibility and negotiate, Barrister Okonkwo told him during one pretrial meeting. We have everything. Fighting this will only make it worse for him. Barrister Ease shook his head. My client maintains his innocence. Those offshore accounts were legitimate investments. The signatures, Mrs. Okafor may have signed those documents and forgotten. Memory can be unreliable during emotional distress. It was insulting, infuriating, but it was also predictable. They were going to fight until the end. So would I. Have you ever had to stand alone against people who were supposed to love you? When everyone calls you the villain, how do you keep believing you're the hero of your own story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned, because when we finally got to that courtroom, Justice Adebayo asked the one question that changed everything. The night before the hearing, I couldn't eat. My mother tried to force jollof rice and chicken into me, but my stomach was a knot of anxiety and determination. I kept replaying everything in my mind, every document, every piece of evidence, every possible question the judge might ask. You need to sleep, my father said, sitting beside me on the balcony where I'd been staring at the Lagos skyline for hours. Tomorrow is important. What if they don't believe me, Daddy? The question tumbled out before I could stop it. What if the judge thinks I'm just an angry wife making accusations? My father took my hand. He'd been quiet through most of this ordeal, processing in his own way. But now he looked at me with an intensity one rarely saw. Amara, I've watched you since you were a child. You've never been a liar. You've never been vindictive. You've always been honest, sometimes to your own detriment. Tomorrow, you tell the truth. You present your evidence. And you trust that justice will prevail. And if it doesn't? Then you'll still walk out of that courtroom with your integrity intact. That's worth more than any verdict. His words carried me through the sleepless night and into the morning. I dressed carefully, a conservative navy dress, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back neatly. Barrister Okonkwo had coached me. You need to look credible, professional, sympathetic but strong. This judge is fair, but she's also traditional. Respectability matters. The courtroom was already filling when we arrived. I saw Chidi immediately, surrounded by his family. His mother gave me a look of pure hatred. His sisters whispered to each other, their eyes never leaving me. Chidi himself looked calm, almost relaxed, in his tailored suit. He'd lost some weight, stress probably, but he still carried himself with that same confidence that had first attracted me all those years ago. Don't look at them, Barrister Okonkwo murmured. Eyes forward. We're here for one person only, Justice Adebayo. The judge entered at precisely 9 o'clock. Justice Folake Adebayo was known for running an efficient courtroom. No nonsense, no delays, no patience for games. She'd been on the bench for 15 years and had a reputation for being tough but fair, especially in family law cases. This court is now in session, the clerk announced. The matter before us is Okafor versus Okafor. Petition for divorce, asset division, and fraud investigation. Barrister Ease stood first, confident as always. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Chidi Okafor, is here today to defend himself against baseless and malicious accusations made by his estranged wife. Mrs. Okafor has filed for divorce based on allegations of infidelity and financial misconduct, but as we will demonstrate, these allegations are either fabricated or grossly misrepresented. My client is a respected investment banker with an impeccable professional record. His only crime, it seems, is being more financially successful than his wife, which has bred resentment and— Counselor, Justice Adebayo interrupted, her voice cutting through his speech like a knife. I've read your brief. I've read Mrs. Okafor's brief as well. I'm less interested in character arguments and more interested in facts. Does your client deny making transfers to offshore accounts without his wife's knowledge? Barrister Ease hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Your Honor, my client made investment decisions that he believed were in the best interest of his family's financial future. As the primary earner and the one with expertise in finance, does he deny it, yes or no? He does not deny making transfers. He denies that they were improper. Thank you. Justice Adebayo made a note. And the loan documents bearing Mrs. Okafor's signature, documents she claims she never signed. What is your client's position on those? Another hesitation. Your Honor, memories can be unreliable. Mrs. Okafor may have signed those documents during a period of stress and— Counselor, I asked for your client's position, not a psychological evaluation of the petitioner. Justice Adebayo's tone was ice. Does your client claim Mrs. Okafor signed those documents or not? You believe she did, Your Honor. You believe, or you have evidence? Barrister Ease shuffled his papers. We have the signed documents themselves, which Mrs. Okafor's handwriting expert has testified were forgeries. Do you have a competing expert analysis? We're in the process of securing one, Your Honor. In the process. Justice Adebayo wrote another note. Barrister Okonkwo, what evidence are you presenting today? My lawyer stood, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her steady presence. Your Honor, we have comprehensive financial records showing systematic asset diversion over an 18-month period. We have testimony from a certified forensic accountant detailing 4 million naira transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, 8 million naira used to purchase property in Dubai under a shell company, and numerous other transfers to personal accounts and cash withdrawals totaling over 3 million additional naira. We have handwriting analysis from 2 independent experts confirming that Mrs. Okafor's signature on loan documents was forged. And we have electronic communications from a secondary phone device showing extramarital relationships involving financial support from marital assets. The courtroom was completely silent. Justice Adebayo looked at Chidi for a long moment. Mr. Okafor, stand please. Chidi stood, his lawyer beside him. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Mr. Okafor, you've heard the allegations against you. Before we proceed with testimony and evidence presentation, I want to give you an opportunity to address this court directly. Are these allegations false? Chidi cleared his throat. Your Honor, my wife and I have had difficulties in our marriage. I acknowledge that I may have made some decisions without full consultation, but my intentions were always to provide for our future. The offshore accounts are standard wealth management practices. The property investment. Mr. Okafor, Justice Adebayo cut him off. I didn't ask for explanations. I asked if the allegations are false. Did you or did you not transfer 4 million naira to offshore accounts without your wife's knowledge or consent? I made investment decisions that I believed. Yes or no, Mr. Okafor? Chidi's jaw tightened. The transfers occurred, but— Thank you. Justice Adebayo turned to me. Mrs. Okafor, please stand. I stood, my legs shaking despite my best efforts to stay composed. Mrs. Okafor, did you sign the loan documents in question? No, Your Honor. I did not. Did you give your husband permission to sign your name on your behalf? No, Your Honor. Were you aware of the offshore accounts before discovering them through your investigation? No, Your Honor. I was not. Justice Adebayo nodded. Please be seated. She looked at Barrister Ease. Counselor, your client's defense seems to rest on the premise that making unilateral financial decisions affecting marital assets is acceptable as long as intentions were good. Is that correct? Your Honor, in many marriages, one spouse handles finances. In many marriages, spouses communicate about major financial decisions. In many marriages, spouses don't forge each other's signatures. In many marriages, spouses don't hide millions of naira in foreign accounts. Her voice was sharp now, cutting. What we're discussing here isn't financial management. We're discussing potential fraud. That's when Chidi's composure finally cracked. Your Honor, my wife is trying to destroy me. She's vindictive because I've been successful. This entire case is revenge. Mr. Okafor, I didn't ask you to speak. Justice Adebayo's glare could have frozen water. Sit down. Chidi sat, his face red with anger and embarrassment. His mother let out a small cry from the gallery. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, probably warning him to stay quiet. Justice Adebayo opened one of the files before her. She read silently for what felt like an eternity. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Then she looked up, removed her glasses slowly, and asked the question that made Chidi's face drain of all color. Mr. Okafor, before we proceed with your counterpetition, I have one question. If you claim your wife is making false accusations against you, if she is, as your family has stated in their character witness statements, mentally unstable and vindictive, then can you explain to this court why you transferred 4 million naira from your joint business account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands 3 days after she filed for divorce? The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, Chidi's mother's shocked cry. Barrister Ease shot to his feet, stammering about improper discovery, about privacy violations, about procedural irregularities. But I understood what had happened. Femi, my forensic accountant, hadn't just traced the old transfers. He'd been monitoring the accounts, watching for exactly this kind of move. And Chidi, panicked by the divorce filing, had done exactly what guilty people do. He tried to hide more money. 3 days after I filed. While he was calling me vindictive, while his family was calling me a liar, while he was playing the victim to everyone who would listen, he was moving money. Money he had no right to touch because of the asset freeze. He'd violated a court order. And Justice Adebayo knew it. Mr. Okafor, the judge said, her voice cutting through the chaos, you are in contempt of this court. The asset freeze was clear. Any movement of marital assets requires both parties' consent or court approval. You had neither. Your Honor, I can explain, Chidi started. You can explain to the authorities, Justice Adebayo said coldly. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Okafor into custody pending a contempt hearing. This case is adjourned for 2 weeks while we investigate the full extent of asset concealment. Everything happened so fast after that. The bailiff approaching Chidi. His lawyer protesting. His mother screaming. His sisters crying. Chidi himself, looking at me across the courtroom with an expression I'd never seen before, pure, unveiled hatred. As they led him out, he shouted, "This isn't over, Amara. You'll regret this." But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt exhausted, hollowed out. Like I'd been fighting a war I never wanted to be in and had finally won a battle but couldn't celebrate because of all I'd lost along the way. If you've been following this story, subscribe to this channel now. Because what happened in the 2 weeks after that courtroom scene changed everything. Not just for me and Chidi, but for every woman who's ever been called vindictive for refusing to accept betrayal. The media coverage started within hours. Prominent Lagos banker arrested for contempt of court. Investment banker accused of defrauding wife of millions. The headlines were everywhere. Newspapers, blogs, social media. Suddenly, the whispers that had painted me as the vindictive wife shifted. Not completely, not universally, but enough that I could feel the tide turning. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Old friends who'd gone silent suddenly wanted to check in. Business contacts who'd distanced themselves were reaching out with opportunities. It was nauseating how quickly people's allegiances shifted based on who looked like they were winning. I ignored most of it. I stayed at my parents' house, working remotely on my architectural projects, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But normal was a foreign concept now. Ngozi came over 3 days after the hearing, bringing pepper soup and wine. We sat on the balcony, the Lagos night humid and heavy around us. "How are you really doing?" she asked, pouring us both generous glasses. "I don't know," I admitted. "I should feel relieved, right?" The judge saw through his lies. "He's facing consequences. But I just feel empty." "That's grief," Ngozi said gently. "You're grieving the marriage you thought you had, the man you thought he was. That's normal, Amar. It doesn't make you weak." "His mother came by yesterday," I said quietly. "Not here, she knows better. But she caught me at the market. She told me I'd destroyed her son's life. That God would punish me for my cruelty." Ngozi's face hardened. That woman enabled him. She raised him to believe he could do whatever he wanted because he was a man, because he had money, because consequences were for other people. This is on her as much as it's on him. Maybe. But it still hurt. Despite everything Chidi had done, part of me had hoped his family would eventually see the truth, would acknowledge the harm, would apologize even if they couldn't forgive. But that wasn't going to happen. In their eyes, I would always be the villain. The 2 weeks passed slowly. Femi and his team worked around the clock, tracing every transaction, uncovering layers of deception I hadn't even known existed. What they found was staggering. Chidi hadn't just stolen from our joint accounts. He'd been running a separate scheme through his company, using client investments to fund his lifestyle and moving money through shell corporations to cover his tracks. The Dubai property? Purchased with funds that should have been in client portfolios. The offshore accounts? Linked to a web of financial fraud that extended far beyond our marriage. "Amara," Femi told me during one of our meetings, his expression grave, "your husband wasn't just a cheater. He was running a Ponzi-style operation. When it collapses, and it will collapse, he's looking at serious criminal charges. Securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. This is beyond family court now. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission will be involved." I felt dizzy. The clients he stole from, do they know? Not yet. But they will. His company is already conducting an internal investigation. Once they discover the scope of it, there will be arrests. Formal charges. And me? Am I implicated because I'm his wife? No. You reported him. You're a victim, not an accomplice. But Amara, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get much uglier before it gets better. He was right. 2 days before our next court date, Zenith Capital issued a press release. Following an internal investigation, we have terminated Mr. Chidi Okafor's employment and are cooperating fully with law enforcement regarding allegations of financial misconduct. We are committed to transparency and protecting our clients' interests. The news exploded. Chidi's clients, wealthy individuals, some of them well-known businesspeople and politicians, started coming forward. Millions had disappeared. Investments that showed healthy returns on paper were actually empty accounts. The Dubai investor meetings Chidi had claimed to attend? He'd been in Lagos the whole time, using client money to fund hotel rooms for his affairs. The man I'd married, the man I'd thought I knew, was a criminal. A sophisticated, calculating criminal who'd fooled everyone. His employers, his clients, his family, and most painfully, when we returned to court, the atmosphere was completely different. Where before there had been some sympathy for Chidi, now there was only scandal. His family still showed up, but they sat quietly, their faces drawn. Some of his siblings didn't come at all. Chidi himself looked like a different person. 2 weeks in custody had stripped away the polish. His suit was wrinkled. His face was drawn. The confidence was gone, replaced by something desperate and cornered. Justice Adebayo called the court to order. We are here for a continuation of Okafor versus Okafor, with the added matter of contempt charges and new evidence that has come to light regarding Mr. Okafor's financial activities. Barrister Ease, I understand you wish to address the court. Barrister Ease stood, and I could see the defeat in his posture. Your Honor, in light of recent developments, my client wishes to accept responsibility for his actions regarding the asset transfers. He acknowledges that he violated the court's freeze order and apologizes to this honorable court. And the other allegations? Justice Adebayo asked. The forgery, the hidden accounts, the systematic depletion of marital assets? Silence. Then Chidi stood, without his lawyer's prompting. Your Honor, may I speak? Justice Adebayo nodded. Your Honor, Chidi's voice cracked. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. I thought I could fix things, thought I could make the money back before anyone noticed. The investments went wrong and I panicked. I used client money to cover losses. I used marital money to maintain appearances. Then I hurt my wife. I lied to her. I betrayed her trust in ways that are inexcusable. It was the first true thing he'd said in months. Not excuses. Not justifications. Just admission. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. From the court, from my clients, or from Amara. I know I've destroyed lives. My own life. My family's reputation. And worst of all, I've destroyed the one person who truly loved me and believed in me. He looked at me then and I saw tears in his eyes. Real tears. Amara, I'm sorry. I know those words mean nothing now. But I am so sorry. I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Because even in his apology, even in his admission, part of me wondered if this was just another manipulation. Another performance. How could I ever trust anything he said again? Justice Adebayo let the moment settle before speaking. Mr. Okafor, your apology is noted. However, this court deals in legal remedies, not emotional ones. Based on the evidence presented, I am granting Mrs. Okafor's petition for divorce. The marriage between Amara Okafor and Chidi Okafor is hereby dissolved. The first wave of relief washed over me. It was over. Legally, officially, finally over. Regarding asset division, Justice Adebayo continued, given that Mr. Okafor has systematically depleted and concealed marital assets, I am ordering that all remaining recoverable assets be placed in a trust. 70% will go to Mrs. Okafor as compensation for fraud and theft. 20% will be held for restitution to Mr. Okafor's defrauded clients. 10% may be retained by Mr. Okafor, though those assets will likely be subject to seizure in the criminal proceedings he's facing. Chidi's mother let out a wail. His lawyer slumped in his seat. But I felt nothing. The money didn't matter anymore. It never really had. Additionally, the judge said, I am forwarding this case file to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission with a recommendation for immediate investigation and prosecution. Mr. Okafor, you will remain in custody pending arraignment on criminal charges. Your Honor, Chidi said, his voice small. May I say one more thing to my wife? Justice Adebayo looked at me. Mrs. Okafor, do you wish to hear it? Every eye in the courtroom turned to me. I could refuse. Could walk out right now and never hear his voice again. Part of me desperately wanted to. But another part, the part that had loved him once, that had built dreams with him, that had believed in us, needed to hear whatever he had to say. Even if it meant nothing. Even if it was just more lies. Yes, I said quietly. I'll hear it. Chidi turned to face me fully. I know you think everything between us was a lie. And maybe most of it was. But Amara, the man who fell in love with you at University of Lagos, that was real. The man who proposed at the lagoon because he couldn't imagine life without you, that was real. I destroyed that man through my own greed and weakness and cowardice. I don't know when I became this person, but I know it's my fault. Not yours. Never yours. He paused, wiping his eyes. You called me vindictive. Said I was trying to destroy you. But the truth is I destroyed myself. And I'm so sorry you got caught in the blast. You mean, I said, speaking for the first time directly to him in court, they called me vindictive. Your family. Your friends. Everyone who believed your lies over my truth. Chidi nodded, looking ashamed. You were never vindictive. You were just brave enough to refuse to be a victim. I admire that, even as I hate what it cost me. It cost you what you stole, I said, my voice steady now. It cost you what you never really earned. And yes, Chidi, it cost you me. But you lost me the moment you chose betrayal over partnership. The moment you chose lies over love. Everything after that was just accounting. Justice Adebayo spoke into the silence that followed. This court is adjourned. Mrs. Okafor, you are free to go. Mr. Okafor, you will be remanded to custody. I stood, gathered my things, walked out of that courtroom with Barrister Okonkwo beside me and my parents waiting in the corridor. I didn't look back at Chidi. Didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. But Ngozi and my father formed a protective barrier while my mother guided me to the car. How do you feel? Ngozi asked once we were safely inside, driving away from the chaos. Free, I said. And I meant it. What would you have said to someone who betrayed you so completely? Would you have accepted their apology or walked away in silence? Share your thoughts below. And make sure you're subscribed, because the final chapter is going to show you what happened next, and why standing up for yourself is always worth it, no matter who calls you vindictive. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the office of my newly expanded architectural firm, looking out at the Lagos skyline. The view was different from here, higher up, clear. I'd moved the business to a better location in Victoria Island, hired 3 new architects, and landed the government housing contract I'd been chasing for 2 years. Life had moved forward, though not in the way I'd imagined when I was married to Chidi. The criminal trial had been swift and decisive. Chidi pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming. Femi's forensic analysis had been airtight, and once other victims came forward, the prosecution's case was ironclad. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 8, contingent on full restitution to his victims. 12 years. When he got out, he'd be in his late 40s, his reputation destroyed, his career over. Part of me felt pity for him, but a larger part remembered all the nights I'd questioned my own sanity, all the times I'd been called vindictive for simply wanting the truth, all the ways he'd systematically dismantled our life together for his own gain. My phone buzzed. A message from Ngozi. Lunch today? I have news. I smiled. Ngozi had started dating again. A civil engineer named Kunnel who treated her with the respect and honesty she deserved. Watching her happiness rebuild itself had been one of the unexpected joys of this difficult year. Definitely, I texted back. Noon at our usual spot? Perfect. And bring your appetite for gossip. I laughed and set the phone down. My assistant, a bright young woman named Kayamika, poked her head into my office. Ms. Okafor, your 11 o'clock is here. The couple looking to build their family home. I'd asked everyone to stop calling me Mrs. It had taken some adjustment, but Amara Okafor, just Amara, no title needed, felt right now. Felt like reclaiming myself. Send them in, I said, straightening my desk. The couple who entered were young, probably late 20s, clearly excited about their first major investment together. They reminded me of who Chidi and I had been once, full of hope and plans and trust. Thank you for meeting with us, Ms. Okafor, the woman said, shaking my hand warmly. We've heard amazing things about your work. Your sustainable housing designs are exactly what we're looking for. We spent an hour discussing their vision, a 4-bedroom home with solar panels, rainwater harvesting, and natural ventilation. They were thoughtful, asked good questions, and genuinely seemed to respect each other's input. Watching them finish each other's sentences, compromise on design elements, laugh together at shared jokes, it was bittersweet but also hopeful. This is what partnership should look like, I thought. This is what I deserved and never had. After they left, satisfied with our initial plans and ready to move forward, I headed out to meet Ngozi. The restaurant was a small Lebanese place we discovered during my divorce proceedings. It had become our sanctuary, a place where we could talk freely without judgment. Ngozi was already there, practically bouncing in her seat. You look happy, I said, sliding into the booth across from her. What's the news? Kunnel proposed. She thrust her hand forward, showing me a simple but elegant diamond ring. I gasped, genuine joy flooding through me. Ngozi, that's wonderful. How? She launched into the story. A quiet beach proposal in Betrayal, just the two of them and the sunset, no drama, no spectacle, just honest love and commitment. As she talked, her face glowed with a happiness I hadn't seen in years. I'm so happy for you, I said, squeezing her hand across the table. You deserve this. You deserve someone who sees your worth. So do you, Ngozi said pointedly. And I know you're not ready yet, but Amara, someday you will be. Someday you'll meet someone who will show you what real partnership looks like. Maybe, I said. But right now, I'm happy just being me. Just building my business, reconnecting with myself, figuring out who Amara is without someone else defining her. That's fair, Ngozi said. Just don't close yourself off completely. What Chidi did doesn't mean all men are like him. I know, but it does mean I need to be more careful, more discerning, more willing to trust my instincts when something feels off. We ordered our usual, hummus, falafel, lamb shawarma, and spent the next hour talking about wedding plans, business updates, and life in general. It felt normal. Wonderfully, beautifully normal. As we were finishing, Ngozi's expression turned more serious. Have you heard about Chidi? About his family? I tensed slightly. I'd done my best to avoid news about them, to move forward without looking back. No. What happened? His mother had a stroke last month. She's recovering, but it was serious. And apparently, Chidi's siblings are struggling financially. The scandal destroyed their father's business. Clients pulled out, contracts were cancelled. They had to sell the family house in Ikoyi. I should have felt satisfaction. Vindication even. They'd called me vindictive, after all. They'd defended Chidi's lies and attacked my character. But instead I just felt tired. Sad for the collateral damage that betrayal always creates. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Mrs. Okafor, Patricia, she enabled Chidi's behavior, but she didn't deserve a stroke. And his siblings didn't deserve to lose everything because of his crimes. You're kinder than I would be, Ngozi said. After everything they put you through. Being kind doesn't mean forgetting, I said. It just means refusing to let their bitterness poison my peace. I spent too many months angry, hurt, consumed by what Chidi did. I won't give him or his family any more of my energy. That evening, back at my apartment, a sleek two-bedroom place I'd bought for myself in Banana Island, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and reflected on the journey. A year ago, I'd been standing in a bedroom holding a phone that shattered my world. I'd been terrified, heartbroken, uncertain if I'd survive what was coming. The court battles, the public scrutiny, the family attacks, the endless questioning of my own judgment, it had all felt insurmountable. But I had survived. More than survived, I'd rebuilt. My business was thriving. My relationships with my parents were stronger than ever. I'd reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I'd started therapy to process the betrayal and learn healthier patterns for the future. I'd even joined a women's entrepreneurship group where I mentored younger business owners, sharing my story as a cautionary tale about protecting yourself financially in relationships. And most importantly, I'd learned that standing up for yourself, even when everyone calls you vindictive, even when you're standing alone, even when the cost feels unbearable, is always, always worth it. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Amar, it's Barrister Okonkwo. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. What's going on? I wanted to update you. The restitution process is complete. Between the recovered assets and the sale of Chidi's properties, we've managed to compensate most of his victims. And your portion, the 70% the court awarded you, has been transferred to your account. It's substantial, Amar. You're financially secure for life if you manage it well. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it felt surreal. How much? She named a figure that made me sit up straight. Between the recovered funds, the liquidated assets, and the court-mandated payments, I was looking at over 40 million naira. That's... I couldn't finish the sentence. Justice, Barrister Okonkwo said firmly. That's justice, Amara. You fought for it, you stood your ground, and you won. Not many women in your position would have had the courage to do what you did. After we hung up, I sat in silence, processing. 40 million naira. Money that Chidi had stolen, hidden, used to fund his double life. Money that was now mine, legally and rightfully. But it wasn't the money that mattered most. It was what the money represented, acknowledgement that I'd been wronged, that my claims hadn't been lies or vindictiveness, that justice was real and attainable if you were willing to fight for it. I thought about all the women who'd reached out to me over the past months. Women who'd seen my story in the news and recognized their own situations. Women trapped in marriages with men who stole from them, lied to them, gaslit them into questioning their own reality. Women who'd been called crazy, bitter, vindictive for refusing to accept betrayal. I'd started responding to their messages, offering what advice I could, connecting them with Barrister Okonkwo and Femi, sharing the resources that had helped me. Some of them had filed for divorce. Others were still gathering evidence, building their cases, preparing for the battles ahead. Each one was a reminder that my story wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who'd been told to forgive, to compromise, to accept less than she deserved because that's what good wives do. My story was about saying no. About refusing to be a victim. About fighting back even when the whole world seemed aligned against you. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Chidi, forwarded through the prison system to my lawyer's office. Barrister Okonkwo called to ask if I wanted to read it. It's your choice, she said. You don't owe him anything, including your attention. I thought about it for a full day before deciding. Send it to me. I want to know what he has to say. The letter arrived the next afternoon. I waited until evening, poured myself some tea, and sat down to read it. Dear Amara, I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I don't even know if you'll read it. But I needed to write it anyway, if only for myself. I've had a lot of time to think in here. About who I was, who I became, and why. The therapist they assigned me says I have narcissistic tendencies, that I was addicted to the image of success more than actual success itself. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's just another excuse. What I know for certain is this. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it. I destroyed you, or tried to. And the fact that you're thriving now, that you refuse to let my betrayal break you, that's what I admire most and regret most deeply. You asked me once, during the trial, when I became the person who could hurt you so badly. I've asked myself that same question every day. I don't have a good answer. It was gradual, small compromises, small lies, small justifications that snowballed until I didn't recognize myself anymore. But that's not your burden to carry. You did everything right. You loved honestly, worked hard, built a real partnership. I'm the one who failed. I'm the one who chose ego over integrity, appearance over reality, lies over love. I hope you find happiness, Amar. Real happiness, with someone who deserves you. Someone who will cherish what I was too foolish to value. I'm truly sorry. For everything. Chidi. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. It was a good apology, genuine, accountable, free of excuses. It was probably the most honest thing Chidi had ever said to me. But it didn't change anything. Couldn't change anything. The man who wrote that letter was a stranger to me now, just as the man I'd married had turned out to be a stranger all along. I didn't write back. Didn't need to. That chapter was closed, and no amount of apologies could reopen it. Instead, I turned my attention to the future. To the new projects I was designing. To the women I was mentoring. To the life I was building. This time on my own terms, with my own strength, answerable only to myself. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a women's conference in Abuja. The topic, financial independence and self-advocacy in modern relationships. I almost declined. Public speaking wasn't my strength, and talking about my divorce still felt raw sometimes. But then I thought about all those women who'd reached out to me. All those voices saying, "Your story gave me courage. Your fight helped me start my own. You showed me that standing up for myself wasn't vindictive, it was necessary." So I accepted. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of women, Young and old, married and single, successful and struggling, I told my story. Not for pity or applause, but as a roadmap. A testament that justice is possible if you're willing to fight for it. They called me vindictive, I said near the end of my talk. And maybe by their definition I was. Because I refused to be quiet. I refused to accept betrayal as the price of marriage. I refused to let someone else's crimes become my shame. But here's what I learned. Vindictive is just another word for a woman who knows her worth and refuses to settle for less. It's what they call you when you stop playing the role they've assigned you. When you demand truth instead of accepting lies. When you choose yourself over someone else's comfort. So, if standing up for yourself makes you vindictive, be vindictive. If protecting your future makes you bitter, be bitter. If refusing to be a victim makes you difficult, be difficult. Because at the end of the day, the only person you have to live with forever is yourself. And you deserve to look that person in the mirror with pride, knowing you fought for her. Knowing you protected her. Knowing you loved her enough to refuse anything less than she deserved. The applause was thunderous. Women stood, some crying, some cheering, all of them seeing themselves in my story. After the conference, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "My husband has been lying to me about money, and I thought I was going crazy. But hearing you speak, I'm going to get help. I'm going to fight." I hugged her tightly. "You're not crazy. You're not vindictive. You're just awake. And that's the first step." That night, alone in my hotel room, I realized something profound. Chidi hadn't just betrayed me. He'd inadvertently freed me. Freed me to discover my own strength. Freed me to build a life based on my values, not someone else's lies. Freed me to help other women find their own freedom. The betrayal had broken me. But the breaking had revealed what I was really made of, and it was stronger than I'd ever imagined. So here's my question for you, the one I ask myself every day. When life breaks you open, what will it find inside? Will it find someone who gives up, who accepts defeat, who lets betrayal define them? Or will it find someone who rebuilds, who fights back, who transforms pain into purpose? The choice is always yours. And choosing yourself is never vindictive. It's survival. It's dignity. Love. Thank you for following my journey. If my story helped you in any way, if it gave you courage to face your own battles, then every moment of pain was worth it. Stay strong. Stay true. And never let anyone convince you that demanding respect makes you the villain. You deserve better. We all do. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, there's a woman questioning her sanity, wondering if she's overreacting, afraid to trust her own instincts. Let her know she's not alone. Let her know that justice is possible. Let her know that the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth fighting for. This is Amara Okafor, reminding you, you are not vindictive. You are not bitter. You are not difficult. You are simply refusing to be destroyed. And that is the most powerful thing you can be.